Are you familiar with the Chinese-American dish Happy Family? It's a stir-fry of various meat and veggie combos like, beef, chicken, pork, shrimp, lobster, maybe some carrots, broccoli, mushrooms, and of course, baby corn. There's no consensus on the meaning of the name, but like chop suey, Happy Family probably began as a clever way to repurpose leftovers. My buddy Sean at #1 best Chinese restaurant here in Coney Island, which isn't really the best, but Sean's a nice guy and is down the street. Anyway, he says that it's called Happy Family because there's a little something for everyone to enjoy while they share a meal and stories around a communal table. I like Sean's idea, and I'm sure there's some truth to it, but Happy Family is also an excellent metaphor for a more complex idea, that all humans are family, whether we identify as shrimp, beef, broccoli, or baby corn. I'm pretty sure I'm baby corn. Just as our Chinese-American Happy Family fuses different foods and cultures, we humans need to realize, and I think we need to realize quickly, that family means more than blood relations and genetics. Family is everyone living in this stir-fry, every ingredient necessary for the family to be sincerely happy. I've been surprised to learn that the idea that family is more than blood relatives was the predominant attitude in the ancient world. In Jesus' day, the family was everyone living under a single roof, whether they were related by blood or not. It's a foundationally different understanding of family from ours, which, especially in the West, has shrunk from including grandparents who live with us to a small nuclear family, if even that. The Jewish people had a somewhat more sophisticated definition of family than we, referring to blood and clan relations as mishpacha, while the extended family living under one roof, including slaves and servants, was called Beit Av. Baylor University's Dr. Michael Foley, a specialist in the early Roman patristic era, writes, "Strange as it is to say, there was no Latin word for the familial unit prior to the modern period. From the pre-Christian beginnings of the language into the 17th century, the Latin familia did not signify a group of people related to each other by blood or marriage, but rather a household, a group of people all living under the same roof under the authority of paterfamilias, parents, children, and servants." So, knowing that Jesus would have understood family in the inclusive manner of both mishpacha and Beit Av, it should be apparent that his ministry is in part about broadening our ideas about who we include in our family. Jesus' ministry, I think, is an example of happy family in action. I mean, he mixed it up with tax collectors, prostitutes, Samaritans, and the other chaff the status quo would rather separate from their wheat. Jesus and his followers are the ingredients for an all-inclusive spiritual happy family. However, merely having the ingredients for spiritual happy family, a diverse group of people from many different ethnicities and walks of life, that's not enough. Once we grasp Jesus' cosmic concept of family as everyone, we need to stir the pot a little bit and mix it up with each other, each ingredient adopting a bit of the flavor of the others while always retaining its own identity. And that's adopting, not appropriating, by the way. There's a massive difference. In addition to confusing adoption and appropriation, we also underestimate and misunderstand the significance of adoption in the ancient world, which causes us to misread much of the Bible. Even though unwed mothers and their babies were stigmatized, in most ancient cultures, a king only becomes so after adoption by God, or a council of gods. The Jewish concept of a Messiah is a king not merely anointed, but adopted as God's own son. I suspect that long before Jesus was born of a virgin, the story about him was one of adoption, because he lived in the era of divine kings. Celestial adoption applied to both Jewish and Gentile monarchs. Roman emperors were the sons of God. So Jesus, as the new, king of the Jews, must also be the son of God. And in fact, to prove Jesus was the Son of God, he is born God's son instead of being adopted. This is as much a political as a theological statement. Once born as God in the flesh, Jesus acts as God's adopting agent on earth, accepting everyone who wants to follow, including us. But Jesus isn't merely an enroller for God's goodness and grace. He's an example of how every human is to adopt one another as equally beloved children of God. We are all one big, divine, happy family, all adopted by God as her children. Everyone is a child of God, a brother and sister of Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, Krishna, Lao Tzu, and the other 8 billion human beings worldwide, all adopted as God's heirs, including you and me. Paul writes about this brilliantly to the church in Galatia in chapter 4, verses 4 through 7. But when the fulfillment of the time came, God sent his son, born through a woman and born under the law. This was so he could redeem those under the law, so that we could be adopted. Because you are sons and daughters, God sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, crying, Abwoon, Father, Mother, Birther. Therefore, you are no longer a slave, but a son or daughter. And if you are his child, then you are also an heir through God. The Galatians were a new kind of religious family, comprised of Jews and Gentiles. Consequently, they were arguing about whether new non-Jewish Christians needed to observe Jewish dietary and circumcision laws, as well as other rituals. The answer had not only religious, but also social and political implications, because Jews were the only subculture in the empire given special dispensation to ignore Roman festivals and holidays, and those festivals' associated taxes. Paul tells his new hybrid congregation, perhaps the first religious community ever to be comprised of different religious ideologies, he tells them to remember that they have all been adopted by God and so are now a new family with new rules, the main one being, hey, if you're a Jew, maintain your Jewish traditions. And if you're not a Jew, just stop worshiping other gods and you're good. Happy Family doesn't assimilate its ingredients into a flavorless mush. It gently stirs everyone together so that there's a little something for all of us. While Paul encourages Jews to maintain their traditions, he also makes it clear the law doesn't apply to new Gentile Jesus followers, because he already knows the secret to a spiritual happy family is diversity. It's not happy family if the only ingredient is shrimp. And it's not spiritual happy family if the only ingredient is a one-dimensional Jesus as a sacrificial lamb. Instead, spiritual happy family includes all of our ideas, not only about Jesus, but also ideally about Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, Taoist, Shintoist, Hindu, Baha'i, indigenous, pagan, and other spiritualities. The more we mix up these world religions, the more flavorful our happy family becomes. So I have a question for you. If we are clever enough to recognize that sometimes we want a little fish, a little chicken, and a little baby corn, and that other times, and other people, might want beef, pork, and carrots, then why are we not clever enough to imagine a God who also encompasses such variety? A God who, in response, by the way, offers itself through a legion of religions, philosophies, and spiritualities worldwide. If we consider ourselves Jesus followers, his spiritual happy family recipe is simple. Love your neighbor as yourself. Not convert your neighbor to your religion, but simply love your neighbor as yourself, as a family. It's Jesus' way of asking us to see everyone and everything as an intimate, divine relative, all sons and daughters of a God of compassion and endless love. Amen. Our question to consider today is, how does expanding our concept of family reshape our world? How might expanding our concept of what family is help reshape our world? As usual, I'll send you into a couple of breakout rooms for a few moments.